With the Blue Eye Samurai series gaining traction, interest in the lives of samurais has never been more intense. But how real is this portrayal? Get ready to dive into the history of the samurai, exploring the true code of honor, the battles that shaped feudal Japan, and the challenges these warriors faced on the battlefield. Today, we'll uncover how historical figures inspire the fiction that has captivated the world. To truly understand these legendary warriors, let's first explore the core values that guided every samurai, their unwavering code of honor. Samurais, more than skilled warriors, were the guardians of a complex code of conduct that guided every aspect of their lives. This code, known as Bushido, or the Way of the Warrior, was more than a set of rules. It was a way of life. Bushido dictated that honor, loyalty, and discipline were supreme values, instilling in each samurai an unbreakable sense of duty. For them, life was not worth living without honor, and many samurais preferred death over dishonoring their name, family, or lord. From an early age, young samurais were rigorously trained to face not only enemies in battle, but also their own weaknesses. Training began in childhood, involving an exhaustive routine that included mastery of martial arts, the handling of the katana, and the development of a calm and resilient mind. It was not just about physical strength. Samurais were trained to remain calm in extreme situations, cultivating the ability to act with precision and self-control, even in the face of imminent death. The philosophy of Bushido permeated every aspect of a samurai's life. They were encouraged to adopt a life of simplicity, avoiding excess, and constantly seeking personal improvement. Discipline was not reserved only for the battlefield. It extended to how a samurai dealt with his family, his subordinates, and everyday matters. Even in times of peace, training and meditation were daily practices, reinforcing the idea that preparation for battle began in the mind. Loyalty was another central pillar of Bushido. A samurai owed unquestionable loyalty to his daimyo, feudal lord, serving him with devotion until death. Betraying one's lord or failing to keep a promise was seen as the greatest dishonor. On many occasions, this loyalty led samurais to commit seppuku, a ritual suicide, as a way to atone for their failures and restore their honor. This act was not seen as a tragedy, but rather as the ultimate demonstration of courage and fidelity to the code. Finally, Bushido instilled a profound respect for life and death. Although samurais were fierce warriors, they understood the weight of taking a life. The sword, a symbol of the samurai, was seen not only as a weapon, but as an extension of the wielder's soul. It represented the samurai's responsibility to protect the weak and act justly. This balance between strength and compassion defined the true spirit of the warrior, setting samurais apart from mere mercenaries. Now that we have delved into the code that defined every samurai, let's explore the historical backdrop of feudal Japan, where these warriors were not just fighters, but key players in a complex society. Feudal Japan was an era marked by constant conflicts, political intrigues, and complex alliances. During this period, which spanned from the 12th to the 19th century, the country was governed by a rigid class structure and dominated by warlords known as daimyos. These daimyos controlled vast tracts of land and maintained private armies composed of samurais who became the elite military class of Japanese society. Samurais, therefore, were not just warriors, they were the backbone of a system that upheld power and order. The rise of the samurais as the dominant class occurred amidst a divided Japan. Internal wars and clan rivalries were constant, and the country found itself in a near-perpetual state of civil war. These wars shaped Japan, transforming small clans into powerful regional rulers who competed for control of the shogunate, the military government that effectively held real power in the country, while the emperor remained a symbolic figure. This chaotic scenario required samurais not only to be skilled in combat, but also to possess deep strategic knowledge and unwavering loyalty. As elite warriors, samurais played multifaceted roles in feudal society. They were not just soldiers, they also served as administrators, tax collectors, and advisors to their daimyos. This position of power and influence was accompanied by a strict code of conduct and an expectation of absolute obedience. The training of a samurai began in childhood and included not only the arts of war, but also the study of strategy, philosophy, calligraphy, and poetry. This balance between warrior and scholar was fundamental to the ideal of the perfect samurai. Feudal Japanese society was rigidly stratified, with samurais positioned just below the daimyos and above peasants, artisans, and merchants. This hierarchical structure reflected a social order that emphasized discipline and duty. Samurais were seen as the protectors of order and justice, and their presence on the lands of the daimyos served both to maintain peace and to project the power and prestige of their lords. However, with this elevated status came sacrifices. The life of a samurai was full of dangers, and failure to fulfill one's duties could mean the loss of honor or even life. The internal wars between clans were not just battles for territory, but also disputes for honor and legacy. Entire families were involved in these conflicts, and marital alliances were often used to seal peace pacts or strengthen ties between clans. Samurais, with their code of loyalty and sacrifice, often found themselves in moral dilemmas, having to choose between duty to their lord or their personal convictions. These moments of internal conflict are frequently depicted in Japanese literature and theater, perpetuating the image of the samurai as a tragic hero. Having explored the historical context of feudal Japan and the pivotal role samurais played, we can now dive into how Blue Eye Samurai bridges the gap between history and fiction, capturing the essence of these warriors while weaving in imaginative elements. Blue Eye Samurai transports us to a feudal Japan full of action, intrigue, and drama, where the main character, with her distinctive blue eyes, symbolizes the struggle against the rigid social norms and prejudices of the era.
You had a name for me.
The series, although fictional, is a rich tapestry that combines historical reality with imaginative elements, revealing the complexities of the samurai's life. It highlights not only physical combat, but also the internal and social battles many of these warriors faced. Historically, samurais who did not fit the expected standards of appearance or origin faced discrimination. During feudal Japan, concepts of blood purity and lineage were deeply ingrained. Samurais of mixed origins, foreigners, or even those with unusual physical characteristics, such as light eyes, were often viewed with suspicion and disdain. They constantly had to prove themselves, not just in battles, but also in a society that saw them as different. Blue Eye Samurai captures these struggles by creating a character who is a kind of outcast, a warrior who must fight to earn respect in a world that rejects her for being different. While the protagonist's story is fictional, there are fascinating parallels with historical figures. There are records of samurais of foreign origins, like Yasuke, an African samurai who served Oda Nobunaga, one of Japan's most powerful daimyos. Yasuke faced challenges not only on the battlefield, but also in court, where his appearance made him stand out unmistakably. Just as in the series, the reality of samurais was filled with personal and social obstacles. Samurais who came from outside the traditional elite had to fight against prejudice to find their place in a hierarchical and exclusive society. The concept of giri, duty, was central to the samurai's life, but for those who were marginalized, this sense of duty was often directed toward both physical battle and the fight for acceptance and recognition. Furthermore, the series uses the blue-eyed samurai character to explore issues of identity and honor. These themes are universal and resonate deeply not only with contemporary audiences, but also with the history of samurais who often had to reconcile their traditions with a constantly changing world. In Japan's history, we see samurais who had to adapt their skills and values in the face of new ideas, technologies, and eventually, the collapse of the feudal system. Blue Eye Samurai reflects these tensions, bringing to life a world where what defines a true warrior goes beyond the sword they carry. Building on these themes, let's explore the real stories of marginalized samurais whose lives echo the challenges faced by the characters in Blue Eye Samurai and reveal the true struggles behind their legendary status. The stories of samurais who defied the social norms of feudal Japan are as fascinating as the fiction of Blue Eye Samurai itself. One of the most emblematic figures is Yasuke, the African samurai whose presence in 16th century Japan defied all expectations of the time. Yasuke arrived in Japan as a servant of a Jesuit missionary, but quickly caught the attention of Oda Nobunaga, one of the most powerful and influential warlords of the Sengoku period. Impressed by Yasuke's imposing stature and combat skills, Nobunaga granted him the title of samurai, an extraordinary achievement for someone of foreign origin. Yasuke was not just an exotic curiosity. He proved his worth in battles alongside Nobunaga, earning the respect of his fellow warriors. However, his journey was marked by immense challenges. Beyond the linguistic and cultural barriers, he faced the prejudice of a society that valued blood purity and distrusted anyone who did not fit its rigid standards. Yasuke symbolizes the resilient spirit of all samurais who, despite being seen as different, fought to find their place in history. Beyond Yasuke, there were other figures who challenged the social norms of feudal Japan. Female samurais, or Anabugeisha, also broke with gender expectations. Although not as common as their male counterparts, some women were born into samurai families and received combat training to protect their lands and families in times of war. One notable figure was Tomo Gozen, a legendary warrior who fought bravely in battles and whose combat skills were so respected that she became a heroic figure in Japanese legends. These marginalized samurais, whether due to their origin, gender, or social status, shared a common trait: the desire to overcome the limitations imposed by society. They constantly had to prove their loyalty, skill, and courage to be accepted in a world that did not see them as equals. This is a recurring theme in Blue Eye Samurai, where the protagonist fights not only against external enemies, but also against the invisible barriers of discrimination and prejudice. Stories of samurais of mixed origins, ronins, masterless samurais, and warriors who broke with tradition are more common than one might think. Many samurais went through periods of uncertainty and had to reinvent themselves to survive in a constantly changing society. These samurais, who were on the fringes of society, defied conventions and redefined what it meant to be a true warrior. As we look at the stories of these resilient and marginalized samurais, we begin to understand the complexities of their struggles. Next, we'll explore how the fall of the samurais marked the end of an era, forever changing the landscape of Japan. The era of the samurais, which dominated Japan for centuries, began to come to an end with the Meiji Restoration, a period of radical transformation that began in 1868. The arrival of Western powers and Japan's forced opening to foreign trade exposed the country to Western technological and ideological innovations. To modernize and strengthen itself in the face of foreign threats, Japan embarked on a modernization process that dismantled the feudal structure that sustained samurai power. The Tokugawa shogunate, which had ruled Japan for over 250 years, was overthrown, and Emperor Meiji was restored as the central figure of power. However, this restoration marked the beginning of a series of reforms that abolished the privileges of the samurai class. Laws were implemented to demilitarize the country, and samurais, once the elite warriors of the nation, were forced to adapt to a rapidly changing society. Their swords, which had symbolized their status and honor, were banned in public, and many samurais had to find new ways to make a living, such as serving in government or becoming entrepreneurs. The transition was not easy, and many samurais resisted the loss of their status. Rebellions, like the Satsuma Rebellion of 1877, led by the legendary samurai Saigo Takamori, symbolized the conflict between the old and new Japan. These warriors found themselves fighting against modernization, which they saw as a threat to the tradition and values that defined their lives. The defeat of these rebellions was the final blow to the samurai era, marking the end of a time when the sword and the code of honor were the law. Despite their fall, the legacy of the samurais did not disappear. On the contrary, they became legendary figures, icons of courage, discipline, and loyalty. Their influence permeates popular culture, from cinema to anime, inspiring stories that capture the imagination of people worldwide. Series like Blue Eye Samurai reimagine these warriors in new contexts, showing how the spirit of the samurais still resonates in modern culture. They symbolize not only the struggle for honor, but also adaptation and conflict in a changing world. The transformation of samurais from real warriors to mythological figures reflects nostalgia for a past where honor was unquestionable and duty was the foundation of life. The era of the samurais may have ended, but their legend lives on, inspiring generations to explore and reinterpret their stories from new perspectives. The swords may be rusted and the scrolls faded, but the legacy of the samurais continues to cut through time like a sharp blade, reminding us of the power of tradition and resilience. With the end of the samurai era now behind us, let's take a moment to reflect on the lasting impact of these legendary warriors and the truths that lie behind their enduring myths. The stories of the samurais transcend time, capturing the imagination of generations through legends, films, and now, series like Blue Eye Samurai. Throughout this video, we explored the fascinating journey of these warriors, from their unwavering code of honor to the tragic fall of the feudal era. Understanding the true story behind the legends is not only an exercise in knowledge, but also a way to honor the complexity and real sacrifices of the individuals who shaped Japan. While fiction entertains use, it also has the power to reflect profound truths. Blue Eye Samurai not only reimagines a world of swords and honor, but also reminds us that behind every legend are human beings fighting their own demons and prejudices. The series is a mirror of feudal Japanese society, showing that the samurai's internal battles, whether for acceptance, survival, or redemption, still echo today, resonating with modern audiences. It is important to recognize that, despite their fall, the samurais left a legacy that goes beyond battles and spilled blood. They taught us about resilience, the value of duty, and the relentless pursuit of a life guided by honor. The true stories of samurais like Yasuke, Tomoe Gozen, and many others marginalized by society continue to inspire and challenge notions of courage and sacrifice. Series like Blue Eye Samurai are more than entertainment. They are a means of keeping the flame of these stories alive, retelling them under new lights and through different perspectives. They invite us to reflect on the values of the samurais and to apply these principles in our own lives, where the fight for honor and justice remains relevant. The world may have changed, but the human dilemmas the samurais faced, loyalty, morality, and identity, remain. As we conclude this journey, we are reminded that the line between history and legend is thin, but the impact of both is eternal. The struggles of the samurais, both internal and external, still echo, inspiring and shaping our understanding of the past. And so, through legends and fiction, we continue to relive the great stories of these warriors who refuse to be forgotten. Enjoyed the video? Subscribe to Immutable Stories and follow more about legends that defy time. Hit the bell, leave your like, and share this journey through the past that still lives.